June 17th, 2015, the world here in the Low Country as we knew it changed forever.
Panic in the voice of the producer. Her words were, there was a shooting at the church and a senator is dead.
9 people dead inside a church, murdered tragically. Hard to explain and comprehend.
They were in a place they didn't have to be. They were in a place where they wanted to be. They were in a place where they thought they would be safe.
He just attacked the heart of that church, and it really, that church is the heart of Charleston.
I think we were all in shock, not even thinking this could happen here, but in fact, it was unfolding right before our eyes. One of the biggest stories, the most tragic stories ever in Charleston's history.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I was
10 years ago, the Charleston community was rocked by the unthinkable, a mass shooting at a historic downtown church.
That night, we were all here at News 2 when those first reports came in. We held our breath, like everyone else, as we began to learn more about the tragedy that had just happened.
Today, we remember the victims and survivors of the Mother Emanuel church shooting as we bring you their stories 10 years later.
Well, it was a Wednesday. It was a hot Wednesday. The temperature downtown that day, the high was 95. I do remember that.
Live with coverage you can count on. This is News 2 at 5.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Brendan Clark.
And good evening, everyone. I'm Carolyn Murray. It is still very hot outside, and relief is not in the near future.
And for some reason, I can't really recollect, either there was some activity, weather activity, that kept me at the station.
I was here at the station a little before 9 o'clock, and we had a producer at the time, and she was sitting there kind of furiously pecking at her keyboard, and her feet were moving. She was you could tell she was anxious about something, and I wasn't quite sure. I was just at my computer doing work. It's a typical night at Channel 2, nothing special going on. And I asked her, I said, what's going on tonight? And she looked over her shoulder. She said, a shooting downtown.
What caught my attention were a couple of words: Calhoun Street, Emanuel, and shots fired. We listened to the police chatter for several minutes, and as it became increasingly intense, we thought, something's going on here. We decided as a news team that Brendan should probably go out to that area of Calhoun Street to see what was going on, and I should probably go down to the anchor desk.
I just grabbed a camera. I threw a battery on it, threw a disc in it. I jumped in the car, said, I'm going down, Carolyn can be here. I went down to Emanuel AME, Mother Emanuel. And as you can imagine, it just, took me back. Blue lights, sirens, chaos. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. I didn't know what I was looking at. And I'd never seen this kind of law enforcement reaction ever in Charleston, South Carolina, but I was seeing it now on Calhoun Street in front of that church, blocked off ropes, fire department, police, you name it, they were there. And I got back, called the producer. I said, we got to go live down here, send everything we got. We got something bad going on. I'm not sure what it is. Reports were just coming in. You didn't know. No one knew at the time what had happened. We knew something bad had happened. We had no idea the scale of it.
So in that moment, I realized pretty quickly I was wearing 2 hats, because I was a journalist and I knew I needed to get down to the news set, but I also knew Emanuel AME Church, shots fired. I knew my mother-in-law had spent the day in church because she'd been at a conference at Emanuel AME Church. Emanuel AME Church was as important to my mother-in-law as her children. This was her family, and she spent a lot of time in this church. In 2015, she was in her 80s already and had grown up in that church. And so I knew that she had been there all day, and so my immediate reaction was, I need to find out if she knows what's happening near Emanuel AME Church. Breaking news coming in right now. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Carolyn Murray. News of a mass shooting at a downtown Charleston church with multiple injuries, possible fatalities.
So it came down, live trucks, photographers, cameramen, law enforcement, people, curious onlookers. You can see police have this area on lockdown. No one's going anywhere. This is as far as we're going. And a buddy of mine, a friend, EMS, fire department, comes down Calhoun Street where I was. I was at the corner of Meeting and Calhoun at the gas station, right there at the gas station. Mother Emanuel behind me. He comes by, I'm like, hey man, what's going on over there? Because we still just didn't know. And he just shook his head. He says, what I just saw was horrific. I can't put it into words, but it was just horrific. And he just walked away. And this is a buddy of mine who I had conversations with. He couldn't even have a conversation with me at that time. So when I heard that, I said, this is really bad. And then he came back and talked to me, and he says, he told me, he gave me some insight as to what was inside that church. And so that just triggered me in my mind. This is the biggest story I've ever covered in my 3 decades of journalism. So that happened. Continued to do live shots, kept getting updates. There's a lot of stuff going on. You're a little bit nervous, anxious. You know, what's going on here? What's happening? Just not knowing was a scary part of it, I think, for all of us. And then there was a bomb threat. So they moved us from Meeting and Calhoun to King and Calhoun. And I'm drenched in sweat at this time. We got so much going on. You're trying to keep up with social media. People are in your ear back at the station. You're here, you're hearing this, you're hearing that. It was just, I don't want to say organized chaos, but there was definitely a lot of stuff going on at the time.
The hardest part for us was we started getting information. So that was really hard for us because we were getting bits and pieces and pretty good information, reliable sources who may have been involved in this, but we couldn't go on TV and talk about it. And obviously that's our job, is to inform people, but we have to be respectful too. And we have to be right and accurate. And then when we started hearing the number of people, then it really hit home.
I kept calling my mother-in-law, kept calling her cell phone. She wasn't answering, looking at information that's coming into my phone. And at some point during that evening, I get a text message from my niece, and she wrote, 9 people shot. And I wrote a single word back, impossible.
We got moved back to the corner of King and Calhoun, and kept getting updates. And then I remember the big moment was when Mayor Riley and then Police Chief Greg Mullen came to hold a press conference.
This is the worst night of my career. This is clearly a tragedy in the city of Charleston.
And that's where they confirmed that 9 people had been killed inside that church.
When officers arrived, they found a number of victims inside, and we had also individuals that were transported to the MUSC Emergency Trauma Center. As the investigation continued, we were able to determine that there were 8 deceased individuals inside of the church. 2 individuals were transported to MUSC. One of them has died. So at this point, we have 9 victims in this heinous crime that has been committed.
And there was just a gasp because the media was there for this press conference, but everyone just around who heard that, and you could just feel the bottom fall out.
We have investigators that are out tracking leads that are coming in, and we will continue to do that until we find this individual who has carried out this crime tonight and bring him to justice.
And now we have 9 people dead inside a church, murdered tragically. It was just, it's hard to explain and comprehend what was going on. You're trying to take in everything and relay this information to others. And immediately there are prayer circles and people praying and that sort of thing.
Strengthen us, God.
Yes. Yes.
Hold us up, God. I'm weak.
Yes.
Dr. King said it come a time in a man's life when a man have done everything he can do, and he can do no more, God, but stand still.
Yes.
And hear from the voice of the Lord.
Yes, sir.
Speak to us, God.
Yes, Lord.
Speak, God. Speak to us, God.
Speak, Lord.
God, and in the morning.
In the morning, Lord.
Keep
Calm
this
the heart.
community together, God.
Yes, Lord.
I was anchoring, we were live coverage until probably 4 or 5 in the morning. And, and then the morning crew comes in and takes over.
June 17th, 2015, the world here in the Low Country as we knew it changed forever. I remember waking up at around 9:30 p.m. to my phone ringing like crazy, several text messages. And I remember looking at the phone and reading the text messages and thinking, I must still be sleeping. This has to be a nightmare. It can't be real.
Panic in the voice of the producer. Her words were, there was a shooting at the church and a senator is dead. And you're in that fog of sleep because our wake-up call is 2:30 in the morning, so a 9:30 p.m. wake-up is jarring for us, and it's like you try to get your head around what is needed from you, and when you get her to repeat it, maybe the third or fourth time she says it, it sets in that this is a huge deal, and right away that this is going to be one of those events that's going to last a long time, and it's going to be ingrained in the memories of people for forever around here. By the time I got downtown, there was still a massive police presence, obviously. There were police and unmarked police and plainclothes officers everywhere. Down side streets, because there's, you're still looking for a shooter at that point, very actively looking for a shooter locally.
We are looking for a white male, approximately 21 years old, sandy blonde hair, and he obviously is extremely dangerous.
I was here at the station in the studio, and my news director at the time, I guess he could see I was a mess, asked me if I was okay to go on. And to be honest, I wasn't, but I knew I had to. I knew I had to. I can honestly say in nearly 25 years of being in this news industry, that morning was one of the worst days. One of the worst and saddest days. We covered the story as details continue to unfold. And the whole time it was like I was doing my job, but my mind was really thinking, oh my God. Oh my God. I know people at Mother Emanuel. And to find out that we lost 9 beautiful souls, it was overwhelming.
One thing I always remember, go back to how hot it was. Mayor Riley came in a suit at the time, and I always found that interesting. And he had later said, I came in a suit out of respect for knowing what had happened. That I couldn't come in a golf shirt. I needed to come and show respect for what had just happened, and that's why I put on a suit, and I came prepared to accept the worst and talk about it and begin the healing process. Really, there's a lot of uncertainty after that, what had happened. A lot of the national media was all here, and you wondered what was going to happen.
This is a most unspeakable and heartbreaking tragedy. In historic Emanuel AME Church, the mother church of the AME churches, people in prayer on a Wednesday evening, a ritual, coming together, praying and worshiping God, to have a awful person come in and shoot them is inexplicable, obviously the most intolerable and unbelievable act possible.
I go back to that news conference because that's a vision in my mind that's ingrained in that night when they talked about what had happened and basically said this was an act of violence, it was an act of racial violence, and we're not going to tolerate this. And we're going to find the person who did this, and we're going to make sure they never do this to anybody again. And there was never anybody wavering, well, maybe it was this, maybe it was that. No, they called it exactly what it was. And I think everybody who watched that appreciated that, because there was no gray area where you could say, well, you're not really believing it was this. No, it was that.
The only reason someone could walk into church and shoot people praying is out of hate. The only reason. That it is the most dastardly act that one can possibly imagine. And we will bring that person to justice as soon as possible.
We are live in downtown Charleston on the scene of a mass murder at the Emanuel AME Church in downtown Charleston.
Help police identify this Charleston church shooting suspect. He is described as a young white male. He's approximately 5'9" with a slender build.
So we got updates on a regular basis. It felt like they were coming fast and furious, and then that overnight period, there's a longer delay. All you know is that they're looking for this guy. I don't recall if there were any false sightings where we were getting word that maybe they were on to him somewhere. Police saturating the area, still looking for this shooter who came in last night in the 9 o'clock hour and opened fire inside this church. I'm gonna say early afternoon, maybe late morning, that the video started to come out. We saw him walking into the church.
We have photos of the suspect and the suspect's car. They're looking for a white male, 5'9", with a bowl cut. They said this man is considered armed and very dangerous.
They had the description of the car. They had the security camera right away from the church. So they had a picture, and then, they said a kid with a blonde hair, white male, work boots, gray shirt. They had a pretty good description of him.
It was the early part of the day when he was discovered somewhere around 77, like near Charlotte.
They caught him quickly, which was fortunate. And he was in less than 24 hours in Shelby, North Carolina.
I am very, very pleased to announce that we have made an arrest in this case.
The man who participated in a Bible study at Mother Emanuel AME before police say he pulled out a gun and killed them, locked up in isolation at the Charleston County Jail.
Was caught about 250 miles away, about 14 hours after that shooting near Shelby, North Carolina. Tonight, the Lowcountry relieved that he is now in police custody, but many continuing to grieve and ask why.
Yeah, the only thing that matches the that feeling of devastation when you understand and you figure out finally what in the world you're coming to grips with what happened was, we're all standing there melting under the Charleston sun in the middle of the afternoon in June. The only thing to match that the other way is when you heard they got him. They got him, they found him, and they have him in custody, and you could feel it. There wasn't an audible cheer along Media Row, but we all kind of got a little extra pep in your step because you're worn down by then after being out there for so long. But that, I think that was a shot in the arm for everybody in this community, and to be able to convey that to them, because you could feel just the weight of it from everybody. I mean, everybody watching, all the community members who were out there. And once everybody heard they got him and he was in custody, it was, it puts you in a much better frame of mind to continue the coverage.
When he was pulled over and arrested there in Shelby, North Carolina, and will eventually be brought back here to Charleston, where the process will begin. And
Today is June 19th, 2015, Charleston County Bond Court.
When the bond hearing happened, I was in the back of the courtroom during the bond hearing. I didn't know what was going to happen. I've been to bond court many, many times. I had no idea what was going to happen.
People were angry, people were confused, and we didn't know exactly what was going to happen.
And then one by one, the family members got up.
Took something very precious away from me. I would never talk to her ever again. I would never be able to hold her again. But I forgive you. And have mercy on your soul.
I can still hear her voice and the pain and the emotion in it. And it was so hard to handle at the point. And she was in so much pain.
You hurt me. You hurt a lot of people. But God forgive you. And I forgive you.
The family members got up and started saying, "I forgive you," to this man who had just killed their family members. And I thought, again, this is the Wednesday night Bible study group. That's exactly what Jesus would have them do.
You know, I forgive you and my family forgive you.
When they basically said, "We forgive you," boy, that must have been hard for them to do. But they're very faith-based, and they know that they're not here to judge. The young man will be judged in time. But I think what that did for all of us is just show how wonderful these families are, having just lost a loved one, and how much they rely on their faith to get them through.
We welcome you Wednesday night in our Bible study with open arms. You have killed some of the most beautifulest people that I know. Every fiber in my body hurts. And I'll never be the same. Tawanza Sanders is my son, but Tawanza was my hero. Tawanza was my hero. But as we said in Bible study, we enjoyed you, but may God have mercy on you.
It is a church that has been long-suffering, but at the same time, it's a church that is abundantly prosperous when it comes to uplift and support and showing love to people, particularly those who have been disenfranchised, marginalized, and hurt.
We have no room for hating, so we have to forgive.
And so when the words forgiveness were said for the first time, I think for some people, it may have been confusing in some way. How could you so quickly forgive someone who took your loved one's life? But I think for those who grew up being taught a certain thing, they realize that forgiveness is not about that person who created the harm. It is that I don't want to be locked in anger and hate.
And I acknowledge that I am very angry. But one thing DePayne has always joined in our family with is that she taught me that we are the family that love built.
I remember just sitting around and thinking and looking at each of these family members, thinking about what they've gone through and then the strength they have to stand up and forgive him. And I know this, you know, I'm a Christian personally, but I thought about Jesus on the cross going, Father, forgive them. And I thought that's exactly what these folks are saying. They're doing exactly what Jesus would have them do.
The emotions ran the range from heartbreak to disbelief to rage, quite frankly. But when those families stood up in that courtroom, and they forgave that person, How could we as the community not do the same? That was the catalyst for our healing. No one has ever witnessed anything like that would happen in that courtroom. And we here in the Low Country, we became stronger. We became united. Because in the words of one of the victims, hate won't win.
Although my grandfather and the other victims died at the hands of hate, this is proof, everyone's plea for your soul is proof that they lived in love and their legacies will live in love. So hate won't win.
When the families of those 9 victims stood up one after the other to the monster who murdered their family members, they all said the same thing: we forgive you. And that to this day, I think more than anything, kept this community as the beacon that it is to the rest of the country, to the rest of the world, that hate doesn't work here. It just does not. And you don't have to look very far, but to that bond court on Leeds Avenue, the day after family members were gunned down because they went to go pray at church. That level of forgiveness is a galvanizing moment for the fabric of this community that I venture to say will never be broken or matched anywhere else.
You know when you're an Emanuel because people just walk a little differently. They stand up a little bit straighter, and a lot is expected of you.
More the information came out about how they welcomed that person into the Bible study. Just the more that we learn, the more the heartbreak.
These aren't just church members. Everybody who knows church and knows churches knows that the Wednesday night Bible study, that's the core. Those are the true believers in any church. And that's who had been attacked at Mother Emanuel.
And these are people that a lot of us knew. There were so many heroes that night. Reverend Pinckney was a hero. There were people that were, from what we understand, that were, basically say, take me, don't take them.
I think Barack Obama, the president, coming down and doing the eulogy, certainly was a big moment.
What a life Clement Pinckney lived. What an example he set. What a model for his faith. And then to lose him at 41, slain in his sanctuary with 8 wonderful members of his flock: Cynthia Hurd, Susie Jackson, Ethel Lance, DePayne Middleton Doctor, Tawanza Sanders, Daniel L. Simmons, Sharonda Coleman Singleton, Myra Thompson. Good people. Decent people. To the families of the fallen, the nation shares in your grief.
I remember one of the funerals for a victim. I believe it was at Mount Moriah Missionary Baptist Church in North Charleston on Rivers Avenue. I'm standing with a lot of other media in the audio booth at the top of the church, which is very large. That's a large church. But I'm standing up there. The church is completely packed, and the choir starts singing. and they sang a song, and I couldn't tell you the name of the song or anything like that, but it was just, you could feel the presence of God in that church in a way I don't ever remember feeling it before or since.
To have something like what happened at Mother Emanuel take place here at home with people that we know, it was the unthinkable. Ethel Lance, she was a friend of the family. She was a dear friend of my aunt, and they worked together at the Gilliard Auditorium for many, many years. And she went on family vacations with us. So I knew several others, but I had a family connection to Ethel Lance.
My father has a half-sister, Myra Thompson. And Myra had the responsibility of leading Bible study that night. She got there early. Bible study actually ended up starting late because the conferences that had happened during the day, all of that had gone much longer than it was supposed to. And so Bible study started late, but they even considered canceling Bible study, and they didn't. They said, no, we're going to do it anyway, and they did. There is no way to describe the guilt you feel when there is a degree of relief when my mother-in-law answered the phone and told me that she didn't stay for Bible study. But then I knew the fate of those who did. I mean, there's no way to really feel relief when there's so much sadness.
My daughter and I, Kylie and I, went the next day, and there was a multitude of people who were placing flowers. It was pretty emotional, not gonna lie, a lot of tears. Yeah, because it was hard. It's the place I love so much, and I do remember that the day after. The community came together and placed flowers, and we were there and got to witness it, and it was hard.
Every person who died that day left a legacy. Their stories become one that really gives people strength and brought a community together.
Every time I drive by, I still think of it. And I think about those families, the people who survived. I think about the family members of those who did not survive, and pray for them that they're able to continue to get through what I'm sure even 10 years later is still a long road they have to walk.
There were some folks who survived, and they'll be scarred for life. I know they are scarred for life because they were there in the room, or they were there in another room hiding, or whatever it might have been when the young man did what he did. I'm not going to say his name.
I think an important testament to how we continue to heal as we continue to remember them and who they were. Not remember the shooter, not remember that. I don't even, if you noticed, I don't even say his name. I'm not going to say his name. I don't respect him enough to say his name for the terrible things he did.
Just to hear the accounts, I mean, can you imagine that you're told by that person, I'm going to let you live so you can tell this story? What story do you tell? I mean, it's a terrible story to tell.
I think about a conversation with Miss Felicia Sanders, who is one of the survivors, and she described closing her eyes to pray and then hearing 77 gunshots. 77 gunshots. And she says, to this day, she will never close her eyes to pray again. She described holding her granddaughter, Kamaya, so close under her body that she thought she had suffocated her, and holding her son's hand and trying to convince him not to speak to Dylan Roof. When you think of the word resilience, they live it.
Chris Singleton, who lost his mom, Sharonda Singleton, he was a baseball player, very good baseball player, and tells his story today. But he had a news conference at one of his baseball games the next night, and he stood up and said, you know, love is greater than hate. We had a nice prayer service following Mother Emanuel at Marion Square, and I was invited, representing Channel 2, to do a prayer and give a little talk. And it was just filled with people from all over who just were remembering what had happened and remembering the victims and the families.
What I was going through doesn't even compare to what the families and the survivors were going through. I know I had a job to do, and I had to get the information out to the community, out to the Low Country. So it wasn't about me. It was about making sure that we honored those victims and the survivors and their families. Ten years later, Mother Emanuel is the symbol of love, compassion, and forgiveness for the world. Mother Emanuel is still standing, still steadfast, still strong, still saving souls.
Being in this community for 25 years now, that even then, I don't think for one second any of us thought that it would be the thing that would tear the fabric of this community apart. Because to me, that is an unbreakable fabric. This town and this community, these towns, I should say, because we're all really one Low Country community.
The Low Country, I felt, gathered around the members of Mother Emanuel, and we, like I said, I felt like we, as an entire Low Country, were a family together.
You know, so often we use the word love, and I don't think you could ever talk about love enough. I'm grateful to what that church has been in this community and what it continues to be.
The lasting impact is that Charleston weathered a very horrible storm, and we came through it together. We didn't divide. We didn't fight each other about it. We came together to honor those 9 people and remember those 9 people and begin better as a community because of it. There's a really serious chance that bad things could happen after that, but we did the exact opposite. Charleston kind of showed the country what can happen when you unite and not divide. You come together and you heal together, and that's exactly what we continue to do even 10 years later.
Charleston is so resilient. We hate that these bad things have happened, but you know, we had an earthquake in 1886, and Charleston survived that. Of course, there have been fires, there have been tornadoes, there's been Hurricane Hugo that everybody kind of got together, the firefighters, and then of course Mother Emanuel, but there's just something about this community. Maybe that's why I love it so much. The legacy of those who lost their lives will be carried on, and they're going to live on in this community forever. And here it is, hard to believe, the 10th anniversary of the shooting that we'll never forget.